back on the Morgan Streetman Show. We were getting into some of the attributes of the COVID-19 virus, how it behaves, and some little intricacies that may lead to one to believe that, yes, this had to be actually made somewhere.
Well, yeah, and isn't it interesting that somebody of the stature of the doctor that discovered the HIV virus, and back in 1983 discovered HIV, that's the virus that leads to AIDS. Professor Luc Montagnier, he won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2008 for discovering the HIV virus. You know, he says that the SARS-CoV-2 virus is a manipulated virus, that it was created in a laboratory, and he believes it was accidentally released from that particular laboratory, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, according to what he says, and, you know, one would think he might know, they were trying to work on an AIDS vaccine or an HIV vaccine in that particular laboratory, and as part of that, somehow they may have gotten HIV fragments into a coronavirus, which they were trying to use as the transmission virus for the vaccine. Now, I don't know if you remember this. We've explained on the show before how they've got these new vaccines. They're not like the old vaccines that you might think of. You know, the vaccines that you might think of when you think of a vaccine is they put kind of a wounded version of the virus in the vaccine and they shoot it into you. And because it's wounded, your body can kill it really easily. But then once it kills it, it can recognize it and it develops the antibodies. And so then if you were to actually go out there and be exposed to the virus in its native format, you wouldn't get it because your body would already know how to recognize it, fight it, and eliminate it. So that's the idea of a traditional vaccine. You give you a sort of a damaged version of the virus so you can know what it looks like. Your body will know, your immune system, and will be able to identify it and kill it when it sees the real thing. That's a vaccine. But that's not the kind of vaccines that they're developing today. The new vaccines are these DNA vaccines, which involve having an actual different virus, not the one that we're trying to give you immunity to, but a different virus, insert into your DNA some kind of a character string that's going to cause your body to automatically produce the antibodies. So you see, that's a different way of getting, supposedly, to the same result. And these are called DNA vaccines. So one would assume if they were trying to use the coronavirus to maybe implant a piece of the HIV virus into DNA so that you would somehow create antibodies to it, that was the way that they were working on the new AIDS HIV vaccine. And according to Dr. Luc Montagnier, that's what they were doing at this Wuhan Institute of Virology. And I just think that's really interesting. He says, with my colleague, biomathematician Jean-Claude Perez, we carefully analyzed the description of the genome of this RNA virus. Indian researchers have already tried to publish the results of the analyses that showed that this coronavirus genome contains sequences of another virus, the HIV virus or the AIDS virus, but they were forced to withdraw their findings as the pressure from the mainstream was too great. And he says that in order to insert an HIV sequence into this genome, so the genome of the coronavirus, molecular tools are needed, and that can only be done in a laboratory. A little bit of good news, though, and it's interesting because this matches up with some Israeli research that's come out about how the virus sort of runs its course, and it's already starting to show signs that it's run its course. A little bit of good news from Dr. Montagnier. He says, nature does not accept any molecular tinkering. It will eliminate these unnatural changes, and even if nothing is done, things will get better. But unfortunately, after many deaths. So he's saying the coronavirus itself, as it propagates throughout the population itself, is going to rewrite its own code to get back to what it originally was versus what it was with this insertion from HIV. Now, again, we don't know any of this stuff. But these are people who are experts, obviously highly credentialed experts with a track record of success. And he's willing to put his credibility on the line to say this in public. So, it causes me to wonder, maybe there's something to it. Maybe there's something to what he's saying, and maybe it's not just a crazy conspiracy theory. And in fact, it's interesting because in that particular interview, they asked him about, are you just a conspiracy theorist? Basically, one of those gotcha questions. And I wanted to read you what he said about this because this flows with what we're talking about. He says, conspirators are the opposite camp, hiding the truth. So he's saying that he's trying to bring the truth forward. It's not about whether this is a conspiracy or not a conspiracy. We could look into whether or not it was some kind of a conspiracy for China to release this. Pat, kind of in keeping with what you said earlier, maybe it was a conspiracy to clean out their elderly population. Maybe it was a conspiracy to introduce the virus into the rest of the world, because China was in the process of losing a multi-decade trade war with the United States that it had been up until President Trump's time in office. China had been winning that trade war very effectively. They were very effectively defeating the United States in that trade war, which we didn't even acknowledge was a trade war until President Trump came into office. But, it's interesting how much of what President Trump has said and what he ran on, particularly with respect to China, has been proved true. About how we need to manufacture things here in the United States. We need to retain our intellectual property and technology here in the U.S. Because remember, part of the deal with China is if you want to manufacture something there, they require that you give them the intellectual property, and then they take it and appropriate it. They steal our technology just to allow us to manufacture there. So now that we've heard all these stories about some of the personal protective equipment and other things, the tests that have come from China with respect to this coronavirus, what a large number of mismanufactured, ineffective tests and protective equipment has been distributed and sold throughout the world of Chinese origin. It only emphasizes all the more that we need to be producing our own products here in the United States as much as possible. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.